Find the most comfortable position in your bed. Feel your body growing heavy and relaxed. Allow the blanket to gently envelop you, giving you a sense of safety and peace. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs with cool air, and a smooth, quiet exhale through your mouth, releasing all the tension of the day. Another deep breath in and a calm, long breath out. In the quietest street of a town nestled deep in a valley, where the mountains seemed to cradle the rooftops, there was a small shop. Its sign, a simple wooden plank with a faded golden clock painted on it, had long ago given up on bold announcements. Now it only creaked softly, a gentle, woody sigh whenever the wind remembered it was there. This was the workshop of Elias, the old watchmaker, and it was more a sanctuary of time than a place of business. Tonight, the gentle rain was falling as it often did in the valley. It wasn't a storm, but a steady, patient drizzle that whispered against the window panes and washed the cobblestones outside until they shone like polished river stones under the single hazy gaslight at the corner of the street. Inside the workshop, the world was a bubble of warmth and soft ticking sounds. Hundreds of clocks, large and small, adorned the walls and filled the spaces in between. In the corners, two grandfather clocks stood like silent sleeping giants, their long pendulums still. On shelves of dark, aged wood, small mantel clocks rested, their polished cherry and oak catching the warm light from Elias's work lamp. The stoic marine chronometer, encased in glass and brass, sat on a dedicated pedestal, its mechanism perfectly still. And from all the others, the ones entrusted to his care, came a gentle, unsynchronized chorus of ticks and tocks. It wasn't a cacophony. Over the decades, the sounds had blended into a single, comforting hum, a layered melody like the breathing of a forest, the sound of time itself made audible. Elias sat at his workbench, a heavy slab of oak worn smooth and dark in the places where his arms had rested for 60 years. He was an old man with clear eyes, magnified by the spectacles perched on the end of his nose. His hair was the color of silver dust, and his face was a map of gentle wrinkles drawn by a lifetime of quiet concentration and soft smiles. The only light in the room, save for the dim orange glow from the small iron stove, was the focused yellow circle cast by his brass lamp. It illuminated his gnarled but remarkably steady hands, and the universe of tiny, intricate parts spread out before him on a piece of soft black velvet. He glowed deliberate breath, inhaling the familiar scent of the workshop, the complex and comforting perfume of old wood, the faint metallic tang of brass polish, and the clean, sharp smell of lubricating oil. The rain pattered against the window pane, a soft, rhythmic drumming that seemed to keep time with the beating of his own heart. He felt the day's concerns melt away, replaced by the quiet focus of the now. It was time to begin his nightly ritual. Tonight's patient was a small, antique carriage clock, its brass case tarnished by the sea air of its previous home. Its owner, a woman with a worried frown, had said it simply, grew tired, and stopped singing its hourly chime. Elias understood. He had seen this weariness before. Sometimes things just needed a gentle hand, a patient touch to find the rhythm again. With a pair of fine-tipped tweezers held in his right hand, he began his work. His movements were slow, deliberate, and filled with a quiet reverence that he reserved for these delicate mechanisms. He first addressed the clock's face. Using a small, specialized key, he unlocked the bezel holding the glass. It turned with a soft, satisfying snick. He lifted the glass, cool and heavy, and placed it on a separate cloth. Then, with the tweezers, he carefully lifted the two delicate blue steel hands from their central post, one by one, and laid them beside the glass. Finally, he removed the porcelain face itself. It came away with a soft, muted click. He placed it carefully on its own piece of velvet, its hand-painted Roman numerals looking up at the ceiling like the face of a sleeping child. Now, the heart of the clock was exposed. A beautiful, complex web of brass gears, tiny coiled springs. He adjusted his spectacles, peering deep into the mechanism. He saw the problem immediately. A fine layer of dust and old gummy oil, almost like a gray frost, had settled over the delicate teeth of the escapement wheel, hindering its movement and silencing its song. He reached for his tools. He selected a small, soft brush made of camel hair, its bristles as fine as a feather. He dipped the very tip into a tiny ceramic bowl of cleaning solution, then gently tapped it against the side of the bowl twice, removing any excess. Then, with a touch as light as a moth's wing, he began to clean the first, largest gear. He moved the brush in slow, circular motions, following the curve of the wheel, wiping away the dust of years. The only sound was the soft shh of the bristles against the metal, a sound like a whisper. He worked his way through the mechanism, gear by gear, lever by lever. Each piece was carefully lifted out with the tweezers, its tiny, intricate teeth catching the lamplight. He would place it on his velvet cloth, a tiny golden island on a sea of black. He would clean it with a soft brush, then wipe it with a piece of clean, lint-free chamois leather. The leather was old and incredibly soft, and it made a barely audible sighing sound as it polished the brass to a warm, golden shine. He held the clean gear and would pick up his oiler. It was a simple, elegant tool, little more than a fine steel needle set in a smooth rosewood handle. He would dip its very tip into a small vial of clear, viscous clock oil. The minuscule droplet, shimmering like a tiny, perfect jewel, would cling to the end. With the steadiness of a surgeon, a stillness honed over a lifetime, he would touch the tip of the needle to the gear's pivot point. The tiny drop of oil would release and spread, a silent, perfect application of life-giving lubricant. He would then pick up the gear with his tweezers and place it back into the mechanism. It settled into place with a quiet, precise click, a deeply satisfying sound of something finding its rightful home. He continued this process for what felt like hours. The time had a different quality in this room. It wasn't a thing to be measured or rushed. It was a medium to work within, like the wood on his bench or the brass in his hands. The rain continued its soft drumming on the roof and glass. The fire in the stove crackled and popped softly, a warm and sleepy counterpoint to the rain. The hundreds of clocks kept their gentle, breathing rhythm, and in the center of it all, Elias's hands moved in their slow, patient, and loving dance of restoration. Finally, the last tiny gear was cleaned, oiled, and set back in its place. The heart of the little clock was pristine, its brass components gleaming in the lamplight like a treasure. With a gentle, practiced nudge to the balance wheel with the tip of a wooden peg, it sprang to life. A quiet, steady tick-tock, tick-tock joined the chorus of the room. It was a healthy, happy sound, clear and bright. Elias smiled, a small, contented expression that smoothed the wrinkles around his eyes. He carefully reassembled the face, placing the porcelain dial, then the delicate hands. He polished the glass cover one last time before securing it with a final, soft click of the bezel. He wound the clock's mainspring with a small brass key. The winding was slow and produced a series of satisfying metallic clicks, the sound of potential energy being stored. He then set the clock on a shelf among its peers, where it could run for the night, allowing him to ensure its rhythm was strong and true. His work for the evening was done. He leaned back in his chair, the old wood groaning softly in protest. His gaze drifted to the far corner of the workshop where his greatest treasure stood. It was an orrery, a mechanical model of the solar system he had built himself in his youth. It was a masterpiece of brass and silver. The central, softly glowing sphere of frosted glass represented the sun, and around it, on elegant arcing arms, tiny planets made of polished semi-precious stones slowly orbited. He watched as the tiny lapis lazuli Earth made its slow, silent journey. He watched as its silver moon, no bigger than a pearl, circled it with perfect gravitational grace. A tiny red jasper Mars followed its wider path, while a magnificent banded agate Jupiter with its four tiny pearl moons moved with a slow, majestic authority. There were no ticks or tocks here. The orrery was powered by a complex system of counterweights and was almost completely silent. Its movement was a visual representation of a time far grander and slower than any of his clocks could measure. It was the time of the cosmos. He looked from the orrery to the rain-streaked window. The reflection of the slowly turning planets was superimposed over the glistening cobblestones of the street, as if the heavens themselves were mirrored in the wet, quiet town. Watching it, he felt a sense of profound peace. He felt the comforting smallness of his own existence in the face of such vast, silent, and predictable beauty. All things in their time, all things in their place. A feeling of pleasant weariness deep in his bones settled over him. It was the good kind of tired, the kind that comes after a job done well, after quiet, focused creation. He slowly began to tidy his workbench. It was a ritual as important as the work itself. He wiped each of his tools with a soft cloth and placed each one back in its designated slot in a warm leather roll. The tweezers, with their fine points, the tiny screwdrivers, with their smooth wooden handles, the soft brushes, each made a soft, final sound as it was put away for the night. He emptied the cleaning solution into a glass jar, wiped the ceramic bowl dry, and placed it upside down on a shelf. He folded the velvet cloths, their soft surfaces cool to the touch, and laid them in a drawer. Finally, he turned off the bright brass lamp. The workshop was plunged into a gentle darkness, lit only by the dying orange glow of the embers in the stove and the pale moonlight filtering through the rain-streaked window. The chorus of ticking clocks seemed to grow softer, more gentle in the dim light, 1,000 tiny heartbeats lulling the world to sleep. Elias walked to the back of the workshop, his soft-soled slippers making almost no sound on the wooden floorboards. There, a simple cot and a comfortable, worn armchair were tucked away. He didn't lie down just yet. He sat in the armchair, pulling a heavy wool blanket over his legs. He could still hear the rain, a gentle, constant whisper against the roof. He could hear the soft ticking of the clocks, a sound that was as natural to him as his own breathing. From the town square, the deep, resonant chime of the main clock tower struck the hour, its sound muffled and softened by the rain, a deep, reassuring bell tolling in the night. He closed his eyes. He didn't need to see the orrery to know that the tiny earth was still on its silent, perfect path. He didn't need to see the clocks to know they were patiently marking the passage of the night. Everything was as it should be. Everything was in its place. His breathing deepened, falling into rhythm with the rain outside. A feeling of deep peace, as smooth and cool as a polished stone, washed over him. The day was done. The work was complete. Now there was only rest, and the quiet, gentle promise of sleep.